expired. We'll move to question time, and I call Senator Dean Smith.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Yesterday, as reported in the ABC, the S Bend service station, which is 30 kilometres south of Geraldton in my home state of Western Australia, ran out of diesel. They made an emergency fuel request, with employee Wendy Butterworth telling the ABC we had to really plead to say that we're in the position we're in and the only outlet that can supply fuel in the 60-kilometre radius. She said the supplier was only able to provide half of what the fuel station needed. It will now be touch and go if the allocation will last, she said. This is happening as families across regional Western Australia prepare for possible power outages and severe weather events ahead of Cyclone Narelle. Minister, how has the Albanese government allowed the fuel crisis to get so bad that regional Australians are being forced to beg for diesel just to keep generators running in an emergency?
Thank you, Senator Smith. Minister Wong.
Thank you. First, in relation to Cyclone Narelle, the government will continue to provide the support and assistance as necessary for natural disasters, and I know that my colleague Senator McCarthy may be able to say something about that later in the context of her communities. But what I do want to respond to is obviously what is happening on fuel and the station in question that the senator refers to. We are dealing with a continuing and unprecedented shock to global energy markets. It is the largest in history. And the government is taking practical action, and we will take more. I will say, as I started to outline yesterday, that the conflict is likely, should it continue, to impact on our economy in direct and indirect ways. It's presenting challenges to regional communities, including the petrol station that you described. It's presenting challenges to industries. It's presenting challenges to global markets. What we do say is we need to work together, and the government has acted already to release up to 20% of our diesel and fuel reserves to work to address regional shortages. We've amended fuel standards to keep more fuel made here in Australia for Australians to use. We've stood up a fuel supply task force in the Prime Minister's department, and the Prime Minister has convened National Cabinet to work together on fuel security, and that work will continue.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Smith, first supplementary.
Thank you. Can the Minister guarantee that a tanker will be dispatched to the S Bend service station today with enough fuel to meet their requirements? Yes.
Minister Wong.
We will continue to work with states and territories on...
Order. Come to order on my left. The minister was on her feet. Minister, please continue. Senator Cash. Minister Wong.
We will continue to work with the states, territories and companies on distribution, and including, now that you have raised that, I will ensure that is communicated to the Minister's office.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Smith, second supplementary.
Minister, do you still believe that the fuel crisis in Australia is nothing but far-right extremist scaremongering, as Minister Ayres has suggested?
Minister Wong.
Well, I certainly have seen a fair bit of scaremongering lately. That is true. But
Order on my left. Order on my right.
And
you're about to be hit by a cyclone.
I'm sorry, Minister Wong. Order. I've asked for order across the chamber. Senator Cash, I've called for order, and I'm waiting for order. Senator Watt. I don't intend to call individual senators by their names. If I've called order, there should be enough respect that you stop. Minister Wong.
What I hope is that all of us can have the sort of responsible, disciplined, adult approach to this that the country needs, and that is the approach this government will be taking.
Thank you, Minister. Before I come to you, Senator Dowling, I draw to the attention of honourable senators the presence in the gallery of the Australia Political Exchange Council's 16th delegation from the Philippines, led by the Honourable Congresswoman Charisse Ann Hernandez. On behalf of all senators, I wish you a warm welcome to Australia and in particular to the Senate. Senator Dowling.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Iran is holding the Strait of Hormuz hostage, attacking or threatening to attack merchant and civilian vessels, and putting the lives of seafarers at risk. Can the Minister explain how Iran's dangerous and destabilising actions are impacting global energy markets and Australia's energy supply chains?
Thank you, Senator Dowling. Minister Wong.
Can I thank the senator for his question? I'll also express my welcome to our friends from the Philippines. Whilst conflict in the Middle East is sadly not a new development, the world has never before seen the Strait of Hormuz choked like this. As we know, the Strait is one of the world's most important trade passages. It would normally carry around 20 million barrels of oil per day, but due to Iran's weaponisation of the Strait, we are now seeing less than 10% of that get through. 10%. The majority of Australia's refined fuel comes from the Asian market that is heavily exposed to Middle Eastern supply. This is how we are being affected through the knock-on effect from the reduction in supply to the refineries of Asia, from where we get our liquid fuel supplies. That is what we are feeling domestically. Many Australians have seen Iran's attacks on the Straits, its threats to set fuel tankers ablaze, and have rushed out to stock up on petrol. And we understand why there has been a huge surge in demand, even before those knock-on effects fully arrive on our shores. And we've all seen the videos online of drums being filled up with petrol and of jerry cans flying off the shelves. And that is why the government has been urging Australians to try to only use what they need. That surge in demand, combined with logistical challenges across the supply chain, is now contributing to instances where petrol stations run out of fuel. We understand the scale of this problem. We understand the depth of feeling across Australia. It is why the government has acted early, and while we are focused on it, while we are determined to support houses and businesses through this uncertainty.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Dowling, first supplementary.
As the Minister has said, Australians are seeing petrol stations experiencing temporary shortages due to increased demand, and they are understandably concerned about access and affordability. What message does the government have for households who are worried about this unprecedented disruption in the Middle East, and what does that mean for their day-to-day lives?
Thank you, Senator Dowling. Minister Wong.
Thank you, Senator. The Australian government is looking at every practical measure to shield Australians from the worst of this global uncertainty. And we understand that there are many Australians who are being impacted, particularly in regional Australia. The Prime Minister has advised that National Cabinet will convene again next week to further coordinate activity we are taking to ensure national consistency. Our refineries here in Australia are operating at full pelt, and we are making sure fuel made here is used here in Australia. We've released 20% of our diesel and fuel reserves to help address regional shortages, and we've amended fuel standards to get more into the market. And the new Fuel Supply Task Force is driving coordination across the country on fuel security and supply chain resilience. We know there is more to do, and our message to Australians is that the Albanese government will do everything we can to help you access the fuel you need.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Dowling, second supplementary.
Minister, as you've indicated, Iran's attacks and its chokehold on the Strait of Hormuz is affecting global energy markets and our partners in Asia. Can the Minister provide an update on Australia's international engagement and what we are doing with international partners to respond to this situation?
Thank you, Senator Dowling. Minister Wong.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, President. The government has spent every day since we came to office working to strengthen our international relationships, particularly in our region. And we're working together to respond to this unprecedented shock to the global economy, including by engaging with the Republic of Korea, Malaysia, Singapore, China, India and Japan. Earlier this week, Australia and Singapore agreed to a joint statement to strengthen energy supply chain resilience and to help ensure the continued flow of essential fuels. As Minister Bowen has outlined, the 6 ships he reported had been cancelled have now been replaced, and suppliers are continuing to secure more cargoes, with 3 more this week. The Albanese government is focused on ensuring Australia gets the supplies we need, including petrol, diesel and fertiliser, and that those supplies can get where they are needed.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Scarr.
Thank you, President. My question is also to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. The ABC has reported that waste industry leaders across Australia, including the Waste Recycling Industry Association in my home state of Queensland, have warned Minister Bowen that hospitals, aged care homes, supermarkets and households depend on continuous waste removal, and that public health problems could begin within 48 hours if collections stop. They say being left off the priority fuel list is, quote, potentially catastrophic, end quote, because if they cannot fuel their trucks, the rubbish does not get collected. Why did Labor leave this essential public health service off the priority fuel list?
Thank you, Senator Scarr. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. To Senator Scarr, we are fuel that issues with fuel impact throughout our economy. So there are first-round effects and there are downstream effects, and we know that our response to how we deal with what is happening in Iran has to reflect the impact that this crisis has on fuel throughout the economy. Now, we are very aware of that. So what I would say to you, Senator, I can give you an assurance that the government is working through not only how we seek to obtain more supply where we can, to shore up supply as much as we can, but also to understand the effects of this global shock throughout our economy, including in the areas that you have outlined.
Senator Scarr, first supplementary.
Well, Minister, these effects, as you call them, are being called potentially catastrophic. Will the Labor government fix this today by adding waste collection to the priority fuel user list immediately?
Thank you, Senator Scarr. Minister Wong.
I will. I'm obviously not the minister representing, but I will give you the answer that I can, Senator Scarr, and if I need to add to it, I will. If you're referring to the determination that is current, it does only include ambulance services, corrective services, fire rescue, police, public transport, state emergency service or taxi service. It was made in March of 2019 by Mr Taylor. If this determination needs to be amended, obviously we will.
I'm waiting. You have a senator on his feet. No, Senator Scarr, I haven't called you. I'm waiting for those on my left to show some respect and come to order. I shouldn't have to call people to order over and over and over again. Senator Scarr, second supplementary.
Well, Minister, we're talking about a fuel crisis in 2026, not what was the case in 2019. How can Australians have confidence in this government's handling of the fuel crisis when it has become so bad that even keeping the bins emptied and rubbish collected is now in doubt?
Thank you, Senator Scarr. Minister Wong.
Well, Senator, again, what I would say to you, I've outlined in answer to a question from Senator Dowling some of the measures we are taking. I have indicated to you that we recognise there are more measures that will need to be taken, and we will deal with that responsibly and soberly. And we need to deal with both seeking to shore up supply, and I've described how we are seeking to do that, but also recognise the ways in which any disruption to supply flows throughout the economy, including the industries you outlined, and the government will be very cognizant of that.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Hanson-Young.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Communications Minister. I believe that's Senator Farrell. Today, a US jury has found Meta and Google liable for deliberately designing addictive social media platforms that led to harm for users. It is now undeniable that these multi-billion-dollar companies are making massive profits off products that are deliberately designed to be addictive, to generate division and to spread mis- and disinformation. Products that are used every day by millions of Australians of all ages and backgrounds. 18 months ago, your government committed to ensuring that these toxic platforms were prevented from harming users by legislating a digital duty of care. Yet we are still waiting. Why is your government failing to act to keep Australians safe?
Thank you, Senator Hanson-Young. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Hanson-Young for her question. Senator Hanson-Young, I think the federal Albanese Labor government has been world-leading in some of the issues that you've just referred to, and some of the issues that were dealt with in the court case that you referred to overnight. I am pleased to say that the leadership, or the early leadership on that issue, in fact came from the Premier of South Australia, Mr Peter Malinauskas, when he suggested that we needed to move in this space to protect young people from well, you've referred to the decision overnight. My understanding of that decision is that my understanding of that decision is that it relates to penalties against Google and Meta for addictive actions of their platforms, and of course the world-leading action which the Albanese government sought to take against these companies, and very much against the wishes of these companies, has now resulted in a whole host of other companies, other countries.
Order.
Well, you've talked about this decision overnight, Senator. You've asked that question. You've asked that question. I'm talking about some of the things that the Albanese Labor government has done. World-leading.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Hanson-Young, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. When will the Minister start prioritising the well-being and safety of all Australians over multi-billion-dollar tech giants and ensure that all users can opt out of toxic algorithms and turn that hate off?
Thank you, Senator Hanson-Young. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Hanson-Young for her first supplementary question. We've got an excellent minister in this space, Senator Hanson-Young. We have been leading the way in a whole host of ways in which we are protecting ordinary Australians, particularly. Well, I'm not laughing, Senator Hanson-Young. I'm not laughing. I'm taking your question seriously. So I would object to that reference to laughing. I should say, Kumusta to my friends from the Philippines. Great to see you here.
Order.
Well, you know, my wife comes from the Philippines. I'm entitled to greet the people of the Philippines.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Hanson-Young, second supplementary.
That was like watching a boomer try and work out how to like and not like on Instagram. Minister, could you please explain—
Order. Order.
I know.
Come to order on my right. Order. Come to order on my right. Order. I'm waiting for silence. Senator Wong. Order. Senator Hanson-Young, please continue.
Thank you. Isn't it true, Minister, that the reason your government won't take the action that's required on big tech, who are now the new big tobacco, is because you don't want to upset Donald Trump?
Thank you, Senator Hanson-Young. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. I refuse to take advantage of your youth and inexperience, Senator Hanson-Young.
Order.
I do, Senator.
Come to order. I do need to hear Minister Farrell. I do need to hear the answer. Minister Farrell, please continue.
I do take a drug, Senator Hanson-Young, for my diabetes called Ozempic, and amongst other things, it's an anti-ageing drug. And I am now 5 years younger. I'm now 5 years younger than when I first started taking it. Senator Hanson-Young, we are not afraid of Donald Trump. The answer specifically to your question is no.
Thank you, Minister Farrell. Senator Stewart.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister for Industry and Innovation, Senator Ayres. Global energy markets and supply chains are disrupted due to the war in the Middle East, and these disruptions include the international market for fertilisers. The Middle Eastern production makes up a large share of the global total, and natural gas from the Middle East is a key feedstock for production elsewhere. In the face of these ongoing disruptions and shocks to global supply chains, the Albanese Labor government remains focused on our national resilience and sovereign capability. Minister, what is the status of Australia's fertiliser market?
Thank you, Senator Stewart. Minister Ayres.
Well, thanks, President, and thanks, Senator Stewart, for that question. Of course, the conflict in the Middle East is not just an unprecedented shock for global energy markets. There are a series of other commodities that make their way through the Straits of Hormuz or are affected by global energy markets. This is particularly the case for fertiliser-grade urea. Australia relies on imports of fertiliser-grade urea for more than 65% of our total demand. Industry has advised that near-term planting demand for urea is largely covered, but the risks to the Australian agriculture sector will increase the longer disruption continues. We have strong trade relationships and experienced fertiliser distributors with whom the government is working closely. Importers and officials from the government have been exploring over the course of the period since the conflict began contingency sources of fertiliser-grade urea, such as in Southeast Asia. But the global nature of this shock means that spare production is likely limited. We are less import dependent for ammonium nitrate and ammonia phosphate fertilisers. The purchase of Phosphate Hill has secured the future of Australia's only manufacturer of MAP and DAP fertilisers. My department is also engaging on the shutdowns at the Yarra Pilbara facility, which we've been advised will only last for 8 weeks, but will allow the firm to bring forward elements of a planned June-July shutdown, and the shutdown of Kooragang Island, which Orica has advised will be resolved shortly.
Thank you, Minister Ayres. Senator Stewart, first supplementary.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Minister, for that answer. The Albanese Labor government has been working closely with industry, peak bodies and the states since the war in the Middle East began. What engagement is the government undertaking with farmers, importers, producers and the states?
Thank you, Senator Stewart. Minister Ayres.
Thanks, Senator Stewart, for that question. President, I neglected to say that in the gallery representatives of Science Meets Parliament, scores of Australian scientists representing tens of thousands of scientists in Australia's research and development sector. You are so welcome. You are so welcome to the parliament.
Order. Senator Whish-Wilson.
I do thank Senator Stewart for that question. Minister Collins met with more than 50 representatives yesterday from industry, including Fertiliser Australia and grain growers. Ministers Bowen, Collins and I have met the National Farmers Federation and fertiliser industry representatives, and Minister Collins' industry and the ACCC are working on allowing the fertiliser sector to coordinate to ensure that fertiliser gets to where it is needed. My department's engaged on all of these issues and is providing information to the Fuel Security Task Force. President, fertiliser importers, I'll get to conclude this, I suppose.
The time for answering has expired. Yes, Senator Stewart, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. The Albanese Labor government has prioritised strengthening Australia's sovereign capability. How has the government's Future Made in Australia agenda made Australia more resilient to global events?
Thank you, Senator Stewart. Minister Ayres.
Well, of course, the measures that we've undertaken in fuel mean that we have that shock absorber there in terms of the minimum stockholding obligation, and Minister Bowen has released 20% of that. Those options were not available to previous governments. So Future Made in Australia is all about making Australia stronger. The intervention to secure 3,000 jobs yesterday at Boyne Island in central Queensland makes Australia stronger. The intervention in Glencore at Mount Isa makes Australia stronger. That intervention and our gas reservation announcement securing the purchase of Phosphate Hill and domestic fertiliser production makes Australia stronger. The intervention in Near Star Hobart and Port Pirie, particularly for critical minerals and metal smelting, makes Australia stronger. Our intervention in the steel industry to protect the steel industry that those opposite never would have protected makes Australia stronger.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Thorpe.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister for Indigenous Australians, Minister McCarthy. I've seen that you are selling tickets to a Labor Party business event in Sydney on April 9, offering corporate bigwigs access to you over afternoon tea for a cool $4,000 a head. Research from the Australian Institute found a majority of people agree these cash-for-access events amount to corrupt conduct and that politicians should refuse to participate in them. Will you cancel this event to reflect community expectations and avoid public perception that the Minister for Indigenous Australians is engaging in corrupt conduct?
Senator McCarthy.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Thorpe, for the question. I too was very curious to see the article in the Sydney Morning Herald this week about an event which I'm very pleased to attend in terms of meeting stakeholders in New South Wales. I think it's really important to move beyond the areas that I know really well in terms of Northern Australia to have some time with stakeholders in New South Wales. And I think it's certainly important to be able to do that. And we have talked about fundraising in this parliament, and we know that each of us need to look at that in terms of what we're trying to do to support those we are here to support. So thank you for the question.
Senator Thorpe, first supplementary.
This event is priced at $4,000, intentionally just below the disclosure threshold, meaning the identities of your cashed-up guests will not be revealed. Will you commit to voluntarily publishing who you meet at this event so mob and the public can see who is being sold access to you?
Thank you, Senator Thorpe. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. Thank you for the question, Senator Thorpe. I always do my best to work in with the disclosure rules. I think that's why we have it, in terms of being able to reveal what we need to transparently. And
Order on my left.
And it's expected of me as a minister in this government.
Senator Thorpe, second supplementary.
We know that grassroots organisations often struggle to get a meeting with you. Will you use the time you've set aside on April 9 for this lobbyist meeting to instead meet with some of the many grassroots organisations and mob who are waiting to meet with you?
Thank you, Senator Thorpe. Minister McCarthy.
President, thank you. Look, I think that's a really grubby imputation of your question, Senator Thorpe.
Just a moment, Senator Thorpe. I'll just wait for the Hansard reporter to get out the way. Senator Thorpe.
Just point of order on relevance. Grubby, calling my comment grubby. You would have called it on me, just saying.
Senator Thorpe, it's not a point of order. Senator McCarthy, please continue.
Thank you, President. I certainly meet with as many stakeholders as possible, not just here in Canberra, President, but right across the country. And if I can't meet personally, I also try to meet online or with phone calls, and my staff, who are very diligent in trying to reach out to everyone who contacts my office. And I do appreciate the work of my team, but not only in my office, President, right across the Cabinet, and my colleagues who try to assist with stakeholders, Senator Thorpe. And I think you know that very well.
Thank you, Minister. So we'll move to Senator Little.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Ports are warning trade could grind to a halt unless fuel is urgently prioritised. More than 200 electrical apprentices have been stood down. Vegetable growers are reducing production. Rural doctors are holding crisis meetings over fears patients will be left untreated. Public servants are being told to work from home where possible. Federal police have been directed to change how they drive and when they refuel. Minister, how did this government allow the fuel crisis to escalate to the point where it is now disrupting trade, jobs, food supply, health services and frontline operations across Australia?
Thank you, Senator Little. Minister Wong.
Thank you. As I outlined in my earlier answers, what we are facing is the largest shock we have seen to global energy markets. This is an issue that is reverberating throughout the global economy, and countries across the world are grappling with it, which is why we continue to call on Iran to stop holding the Hormuz. Senator, I will take your interjection because I listened to you very carefully, Senator, yesterday, and even if you disagree with the conflict, you could at least call on Iran to de-escalate and to stop.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. I have Senator Cash on her feet. Senator Cash.
Thank you, President. And I think it's pretty obvious it's a point of order in relation to direct relevance. It is the opposition's question, with all due respect.
I do appreciate it's the opposition's question, but as you know, interjections can be taken, and so the aim that Senator Cash, I try very hard to maintain order in this place, but if senators interject, it's up to the minister to take or not take that interjection. Please continue, Minister.
Thank you. I'm very happy to come back to the question. I'm just making the point. I would have thought the opposition would agree that it would be good if the Australian Greens occasionally called on Iran to de-escalate. But I will come back to your question. Senator Little, it is a global shock to energy markets, and Australia is being affected. And we are taking action to seek to deal with it, and we will look at every practical measure that is required to shield Australia from the worst of this global uncertainty.
I thank you, Minister. Senator Little, first supplementary.
Thank you. An AusVeg survey of 150 growers found 27% had reduced or stopped planting, 13% were considering it, and growers cutting back had done so by an average of 30%, while 19% had decided not to harvest existing crops because of soaring costs and supply uncertainty. AusVeg warns the impact on consumers will be felt immediately. Minister, how can your government claim this crisis is under control when Australian families are staring down higher prices and less fresh food on supermarket shelves?
Thank you, Senator Little. Minister Wong.
First, I again say this is a global energy shock, and it is having and could have effects throughout the Australian economy. We understand that, which is why we have taken action, including legislation around false and misleading conduct for petrol companies, the convening of National Cabinet, and the Prime Minister has indicated he will call another National Cabinet for Monday, the appointment of a fuel supply task force coordinator, the release of the beginning of the release of 20% of our fuel reserves, changing petrol standards to get more fuel flowing, changing diesel standards so our refineries comply with more fuel, task the ACCC in terms of fuel price monitoring, engage with international partners to keep supply flowing, and more. As I said, we will look at every practical measure required to shield Australians from the worst of this global uncertainty.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Little, second supplementary.
Thank you. Minister, does your government still believe that the fuel crisis in Australia is nothing but far-right extremist scaremongering, as Minister Ayres told the Senate earlier this month?
Thank you, Senator Little. Minister Wong.
I think I have outlined quite a number of times to the Senate over the question times since the conflict began, the nature of the conflict and the nature of the fuel crisis, which is a global shock to energy markets, the largest in history. And I again remind Australians and remind you, Senator, it is true that the Straits of Hormuz only supplies 20% of the world's oil. That of itself is a very large amount. But it supplies the majority of the crude oil going to the refineries of Asia. And the refineries of Asia are where we get our liquid fuels from. So that is an explanation of how the knock-on effects in global markets are affecting us. We are very realistic about that, we are very sober about that, and we are taking responsible steps to do all we can to shield Australians from the worst of this uncertainty.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Hanson.
Thank you very much. Well, my question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Senator Ayres. Australia is in a fuel crisis. Big oil companies like BP, Ampol, Chevron, Shell and ExxonMobil control fuel held at import terminals and how much is released to the spot market, supplying independents that service the regions. Big oil is squeezing these suppliers, forcing regional service stations to raise prices. At the same time, Big Oil owns many service stations, mainly in the city, and is using regional price rises as an excuse to start gouging at their own outlets. So Big Oil is strangling regional independence and using those price hikes to justify price gouging in the city. If the government declared a fuel emergency under the Liquid Fuel Emergency Act of 1984, it could force supply to the regions and stop the gouging. Will you declare an emergency to stop this extortion at the Bowser, as One Nation has called for?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Ayres.
Thank you, Senator Hanson. It is the case that this conflict in the Middle East is an unprecedented shock. I think the IEA Director General was here during the week, and he said that it was, in his view, the largest in history. We are taking every practical action that is open to the government. We are aware, of course, of the powers that are in that Act from the early 1980s, and we have regard to all of those questions in terms of our approach. And our judgment is that the practical actions that we are undertaking now, including in relation to the ACCC's powers in these hours, is the most effective approach. We have to work together. Government, the petroleum industry, including the retailers and distributors, industry more broadly, farmers, miners, manufacturing sector, the construction industry all work together to deliver the right result. We've already acted to release up to 20% of our diesel and fuel reserves. That is, reserves that otherwise would not have been available but for the actions of this government as a shock absorber for the Australian economy. In our judgment, it was the right thing to do, to release 20% to relieve some of those pressures in distribution chains, particularly, as you point out, in regional Australia, where independent retailers struggle to secure supply on the spot market, in a market that has been constructed historically to provide for the maximum competition. We've given the ACCC new teeth, and we've also lifted the powers of the ACCC that prevent the companies working together to secure supply in a cooperative way.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Hanson, first supplementary.
Minister, you've claimed there's no shortage of fuel in the country, yet farmers in regional areas can't get diesel to plant crops, keep animals alive and get food transported to supply the cities. Does the minister foresee any impediments for the production, processing and transport of crucial food items into the retail market?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Ayres.
Well, as I indicated earlier this week and last week, this is a very significant event in the Middle East. It means that we have a very significant impact on our economy in direct and indirect ways. And the longer this conflict goes on, the harder those effects are for the economy to deal with. The minimum stockholding obligation that we imposed and implemented on the Australian economy means that there is that shock absorber. Releasing 20% means that more fuel has been available, and that has had an impact, a useful impact. We're not complacent about that. We are continuing to work with the ACCC, appointed the Fuel Supply Task Force led by Anthea Harris. The government is very focused on these supply questions, particularly in regional Australia.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Hanson, second supplementary.
Minister, your government will collect $300 million extra a month in GST on fuel, off the back of the price gouging that is going on. One Nation is calling on you to cut the fuel excise fully for 3 months and/or cut the GST on fuel, which is a tax on a tax, and relieve pressure off Australians.
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Ayres.
Well, this government, as I've indicated, has taken action over the course of the period since the conflict and hostilities in the Middle East began. We've introduced new laws to double penalties for false and misleading conduct, up to $100 million, convened National Cabinet, appointed a National Fuel Supply Task Force led by one of our most experienced energy officials, begun the release of 20% of Australia's fuel reserves so that shock absorber can get to work, changed petrol standards to get more fuel flowing, made it easier for Australian refineries to access government funding when they run at a loss so that we're not seeing the closure of more Australian refinery capacity, which is what we saw under those opposite. President.
Sorry, Senator Hanson.
Of relevance, I asked a direct question about cutting the fuel excise and the GST.
The minister is being relevant to your question, Senator Hanson. I'll continue to listen carefully, and if he is, and I'll draw his attention to your question. Minister Ayres.
We've introduced new laws so that the Fair Work Commission can demand companies pay truckies fairly when fuel prices spike. I want to see what you and your colleagues do, Senator Hanson, in relation to those laws that mean truckies get a fair deal.
Thank you, Minister. The time has expired. Senator Cox.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister for Indigenous Australians, Senator McCarthy. Northern Australia has been experiencing successive and compounding natural disasters this wet season. it has disproportionately affected First Nations Australians living in remote communities. Many communities across North Australia have been cut off and entire communities remain in evacuation centres. What support is the Albanese Labor government providing to affected remote and First Nations communities, and how are the initiatives of the government supporting those communities dealing with the effects of these natural disasters?
Thank you, Senator Cox. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. And yes, thank you, Senator Cox. I know you understand Western Australia very well, and I'm looking forward to being with you on the weekend over there in WA as well. You know, it's certainly been an incredibly difficult wet season, and we certainly see where Tropical Cyclone Narelle is now in Western Australia. Across Northern Australia, we've seen its pathway. We've faced successive natural disasters, cyclones, flooding and now renewed river rises following from Cyclone Narelle. And our focus is on keeping people safe and making sure no one is left behind. More than 1,000 people have been evacuated from remote communities in the Northern Territory, like Numbulwar, Nayu, Daly River, Jilkmingan and Palumpa, many for the second time in just a matter of weeks. Jilkmingan near Mataranka, Beswick near Katherine has also gone under, and also Katherine. I want to acknowledge too the communities in far north Queensland, from Cowan to Arakoon, who've been impacted, and those in Western Australia who are now preparing for the re-intensified Cyclone Narelle. This has been an incredibly distressing experience for these communities, to be forced from your home, to not know what you will return to, and that takes a real toll on people's lives. I also want to recognise the extraordinary efforts of the Australian Defence Force. ADF personnel have been on the ground and in the air evacuating communities and helping move people to safety. Alongside them are volunteers, emergency services and local workers who have shown incredible care and commitment. In Katherine, we've stood up a 24/7 AUSMAT field hospital to ensure people have access to emergency and essential health care, and that includes a fully operational emergency department and maternity services, making sure care continues. At the same time, we're supporting communities not just through the immediate response, but through resilience.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Cox, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. This wet season has shown the challenges of life in remote communities, in particular in relation to food resilience. What measures has the Albanese Labor government put in place to support First Nations communities in remote Australia to ensure continued access to food supplies?
Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Senator Cox. Well, our resilience packages have meant more funding for remote stores across the country to upgrade things like storage, refrigeration and install solar panels. These resilience packages are having an impact, President, but don't take it from me. Dion Kelly, Chair of the Ludgermanu Progress Aboriginal Corporation, said the Food Resilience Grant has made a real difference for our community of Ludgermanu this wet season. For the last 3 years, we've had to fly all of our goods in from Darwin during the wet season, and now that the store has a larger warehouse and new freezer, we can hold up to 10 weeks of stock. This keeps our food security strong during the toughest months of the wet season. President, I'm proud we've announced 75 additional remote stores right across Western Australia, Northern Territory, Queensland and South Australia. We'll now be able to apply for these improvements.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Cox, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. What role are participants in the Albanese Labor government's remote jobs program playing in supporting our communities during this wet season while building greater resilience in remote communities?
Thank you, Senator Cox. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. Well, our Jobs and Ranges programs are central to building more resilience in remote communities. And during Cyclone Fina in Warrawee, the RGED workers with Yagbunni Aboriginal Corporation were out with the chainsaws in the clean-up. Likewise, during Cyclone Narelle, the Narungalang Raise participants were assisting the Roper Gulf Regional Council in recovery efforts. Our Commonwealth-funded Yirrkala Rangers have been clearing the road to Gathalala and Arnhem Land in the last few days. Our RGED Vic Daily Night Patrol workers have partnered with Larrakia Nation in Darwin to provide extra patrols around the evacuation centres. And this is happening now on the ground, workers in jobs, rebuilding and supporting their communities, assisting everyone in these times of absolute crisis during these floods. These policies that our government have implemented are working, and I'm so proud that we're doubling the number of jobs that we're providing in remote communities to an incredible 6,000 jobs by 2030, backed by $299 million investment.
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Minister, can you guarantee that Australia will not run out of fuel supplies?
Thank you, Senator Colbeck. Minister Wong.
Again, what I have said is we will do all that we can to shield Australians from the worst of this global uncertainty, Senator. And if you will, you are someone who does understand the global implications of this and the global economy, and you would know this is a shock to global energy markets that we have not seen. And you would understand the importance of us working together. Government, I would hope the opposition, it's a matter for them. Community, the business and the states and territories to deal with the global circumstances that we are navigating, as all countries of the world are. I also have great confidence in Australia and Australians' capacity to navigate these crises. If you look back at our history, whether it's the global financial crisis or COVID, you see that we are a country that has sound policy making, that has the capacity to coordinate well between the public and private sectors, and the capacity for communities to be part of responding to changed circumstances. And so again, what I would say, we will do what is required, all that we can, to shield Australians from the worst of this uncertainty.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Colbeck, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, can you guarantee that Australians won't be forced to ration fuel supplies?
Thank you, Senator Colbeck. Minister Wong.
Well, Senator, these are matters that National Cabinet will rightly have to matters of supply and also of distribution are matters that governments, including through the National Cabinet, are and will continue to look at or act upon. We have acted upon supply measures. We will continue to look at practical measures, and we will ensure that we work with National Cabinet, through National Cabinet, with the states and territories and through the existing task force to look at what is required to deliver fuel to where it is needed, when it is needed.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Colbeck, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, on what date will prices reduce to pre-conflict levels?
Minister Wong.
Come on. Are you looking at what's happening around the
world? Senator Colbeck, I generally have more regard for you than that question would engender, because you know, and everybody should know, that the reality of higher fuel prices is being felt across the world. This is being felt across the world. And as the Treasurer has said more recently, and the Prime Minister, we also know that global markets will not go back to how they were prior to this conflict upon the conflict ending. There is a tail of effects throughout the global economy. You know that, Senator, and you also know that the way we have to deal with it is with the sorts of measures that you are seeing, including the legislation that's coming forward, but also to work to stabilise global energy markets, to look for the supply as the government is, and so forth.
Senator Sterle.
Yes, thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations. Now, Minister, our road transport industry is vital to keeping our nation's economy moving, as I know better than anyone. But the conflict in the Middle East is having an impact on input costs for our hard-working truck drivers and our road industry businesses. How is the Albanese government supporting truckies to get a fair go? And what other measures is the government supporting to help Australians with current cost of living pressures?
Thank you, Senator Sterle. Minister Watt.
Thanks, President, and thanks Senator Sterle, who certainly knows more than most in this chamber about the needs of truckies around Australia. The truth is that without truckies and their drivers, the movement of essential supplies across Australia stops, and that's why we want truckies to get a fair go. It's why the Albanese government has passed significant reforms to ensure our road transport industry is strong and resilient for Australia's future. We're cracking down on sham contracting, and we increase the penalties for employers who dodge their obligations to their employees. Unlike the Liberals, the Nationals and One Nation, who oppose those changes, the Albanese Labor government has always backed our trucking industry and the workers who are delivering essential goods across Australia. But under the current legislation, the Fair Work Commission must consult for a minimum of 6 months when setting contract chain orders which ensure that truckies get safe and secure rates of pay. This government recognises, with the ongoing war in the Middle East resulting in volatile fuel prices, the Commission needs the power to respond more quickly to contract chain order applications to ensure that trucking companies and owner-operators are not left to absorb these costs on their own. In good news for the industry, this Labor government is taking swift and decisive action to do exactly this. Earlier this week, we announced that we will be introducing an amendment to the Fair Work Act to establish an urgent pathway for truckies to argue for their fair share at the Fair Work Commission. This is so truckies and transport operators aren't left to worry about managing rising costs on their own. It's critical that the costs of rising fuel prices are shared fairly throughout the supply chain so our truckies and transport businesses can remain viable. Now, next week, when this legislation comes on for debate, we'll get to see how much the Liberals, the Nationals and One Nation are actually willing to help Australians who are facing fuel price rises. They've had a lot to say about it. The question is whether they will act.
Senator Sterle, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Magnificent Minister, and I can't wait to watch them all line up to vote for this magnificent piece of legislation. Helping Australian workers earn more and keep more of what they earn is a key priority of the Albanese government. How is the government supporting workers to deal with cost of living pressures they are facing right now?
Thank you, Senator Sterle. Minister Watt.
Thanks, Sterle. Sterling, I should say, Sterling. The Albanese government recognises that the conflict in the Middle East is undoubtedly putting pressure on fuel prices, inflation and on family budgets. Low-paid workers are more exposed to financial shocks and experience greater financial hardship, and we support lifting their wages as one of the ways to help them. Today, the Albanese government will lodge a submission to the annual wage review, recommending the Fair Work Commission award an economically sustainable real wage increase to Australia's 2.7 million minimum wage and award-reliant workers. This, along with the tax cuts we provided last year and will again provide this year, are all about helping Australian workers earn more and keep more of what they earn. Now, we know that previous increases to the minimum wage were opposed by the Liberals, the Nationals and the One Nation. There's a bit of a theme here, that ragtag coalition. The chance for them is to say that Australian workers deserve an economically sustainable real wage increase.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Sterle, second supplementary.
Thanks, Watto. Now, Minister, workers in low-paid roles work fewer hours and have fewer financial buffers to fall back on. These workers are more susceptible to cost of living challenges, including the rising price of fuel and global uncertainty we currently face. Why is it important that government support these workers to earn more and keep more of what they earn?
Minister Watt.
Thank you very much, Senator Sterle. We understand that workers are doing it tough right now, and that's why we think they should get a sustainable real wage increase as well. But I'll tell you who isn't doing it tough, and that's Senator Pauline Hanson. She is jetting around the country in her billionaire friend's plane, starting in Queensland, where she tells workers she's on their side, then heads down to South Australia, where she tells seniors she's fighting for them, and then she gets on the plane over to Canberra, where she votes against higher wages for workers and against cheaper medicines for seniors, and now she says she wants to govern with the Liberal Party. Yesterday, Senator Hanson confirmed Australia's worst-kept secret. This former Liberal Party member, who votes with the Liberals more than 80% of the time, confirmed that she would be, quote, very happy to use her numbers to help elect a coalition government at the next election. The truth is the Liberals can't form government without One Nation. One Nation can't form government without the Liberals. They are a ragtag coalition who will hurt Australian workers.
Senator O'Sullivan.
President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Senator Ayres. The West Australian reported that Lauren Thompson and Jep Wilson are young Western Australians who plan to drive to Melbourne for Easter. That is until this government's fuel crisis intervened. Ms Thompson said, "We're a little bit unsure if we'll get to go because of how much it's going to cost us with the price of fuel at the moment." Minister, what do you say to the Western Australians and all Australians that are cancelling Easter because of your government's fuel crisis?
Thank you, Senator O'Sullivan. Minister Ayres.
Well, as I indicated in my answers to questions earlier, and Senator Wong indicated in her answers to questions on very much the same subject, this conflict in the Middle East and the effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz is creating a global shock in energy markets around the world. Australia is more prepared and more resilient because of the actions this government has taken, and we continue to act in those areas. We have taken every practical action. We want to make sure that we are prepared for every eventuality. We are aware of the impact this is having and the extension of this conflict. If it continues to extend, is having and is likely to have in the Australian economy.
Senator O'Sullivan, first supplementary.
Thanks, President. Minister, Ms Thompson also said, "We're not sure if there are fuel limitations along the Nullarbor. We don't want to run out of fuel and get stuck." Minister, you've dismissed warnings about fuel shortages as right-wing extremism. Now, is Ms Thompson spreading right-wing extremism too?
Minister Ayres.
Well, I think, Senator, that what Ms Thompson will be focused on is what practical action the government has undertaken on her behalf and on behalf of Australians. And she will know that we've introduced new laws to double penalties for false and misleading conduct to $100 million. Convened National Cabinet and will continue to use the National Cabinet to coordinate the government's work with our colleagues in the states and territories. Appointed a National Fuel Supply Task Force coordinator, begun the release of 20% of Australia's fuel reserves, so the fuel reserves that we established are able to be used in the interests of Australian motorists and Australian industry, change petrol standards to get more fuel flowing. All of that action and more to protect Australians from the worst of this crisis.
Senator O'Sullivan, second supplementary.
Thanks, President. Minister, Australians now worried about their Easter plans and whether they'll be wrecked by high prices and empty bowels as Australians have to travel long distances on their holidays. So can you guarantee today that no Australians' Easter plans will be disrupted by this government's fuel crisis?
Thank you, Senator O'Sullivan. Minister Ayres.
What I can guarantee is that this government will continue to act in the Australian interest, in the interests of Australians and in the interests of Australian industry. The choice you have to make and your colleagues have to make is whether you are going to join the government in acting in the national interest or whether you continue a partisan approach on these questions that diminishes you every single day of the week.
Thank you, Minister. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. I ask that further questions be placed on notice.